so that we can be inclusive and inviting to you all and not exclusive. But if you have experienced quad bikes in Kilsyth, particularly around about the Balmalick Primary, Highland Park area, please let us know and we can make sure that gets to the right channels. This is my big brother bit when I say, please remember that the meetings are being webcast and are recorded. The nation can see us at any time. Please do not swear. Please conduct yourselves in a respectful manner. And we will, I think, participate in, I think, quite an engaging agenda. I think it's really an important agenda, some highlights, and great to see so many folk who have been previously participated coming back, and indeed a few new faces. But rather than take a whole lot of time at the beginning of the meeting on this occasion to get people to introduce themselves, and I should say, hi, I'm Heather Brannan McVeigh, local councillor and interim chair of the Kilsyth Community Board. If you could, as you speak, as we progress tonight, if you could just take a moment to introduce yourself and your organisation, if you're here representing someone, that would be really helpful. So welcome everyone. I think we're just a couple of minutes past. We'll give everybody the opportunity to come in, but I think we would like to start because we do have a sizable agenda. If people have got notes of any apologies, if you could put that in the chat bar, that would be helpful so that we can include that in the minute. Or if you want to articulate that, please, now is the time to do so if you want to just say it. If not, pop it in the chat bar. If you haven't used this meeting format before, the chat is a wee speech bubble, and literally just you know, you click on it and you write. I would remind you that that is part of the broadcastable element, that people can see the channel. So try not engage in private chat amongst it. Let's keep it public. If it's worth saying, it's worth saying to everyone. And you can also see a participants list there next to the chat bar too. And I've seen everybody's using it really well. So welcome to everybody for doing it. Folk have got their apologies and things in. Right, okay. I'm just opening up my agenda. I was just saying to Christine, just as we were starting the meeting, I've just did the 365 update on my computer, and it seems to be wonderful, but I feel as if I've went back to being a learner. So if I all of a sudden pause, please accept my apologies for being maybe less IT proficient than I usually am. The minutes of the previous meeting have been circulated to us. Are there any matters arising from that minute in advance of us agreeing them? Any matters arising from the minutes that have been previously circulated? Anyone? A lot of the items are being picked up on the agenda, so we won't lose anything. Not seeing anything there. So can we approve the minute, please, colleagues? Right, Bill is waving to me, so I'm assuming that's an Alan as well. Thank you, Bill and Alan, for approving and seconding those minutes. Appreciated. We move on. Like, how many documents can I have open? So when I said interim chair, I will lead in to this item. It's always been the aspiration of council, one that I wholeheartedly endorse, that community boards are supposed to be chaired by local people. And while I recognise that I am a local person, I'm also an elected member, and I can appreciate that for some that would mean that I'm perhaps too entrenched or connected to council agendas. So we've always felt, from a community empowerment perspective and a community leadership perspective, that a local person should be encouraged to take the chair. And while they sat back a little, not wanting to come forward, not one but two local people have stepped forward with a to express an interest. I'm delighted that Bill Craik has expressed an interest in being chair, and I think Alan, Alan Stevenson, you've expressed an interest in being vice chair going forward, just to make sure that we have that opportunity of support and dynamic duo. I'm not going anywhere. I'll be continuing my participation, but Bill has submitted his nomination paper for chair. So Matt, can I take it to you regarding the discussion for what happens next?
Thanks, Chair. It's just if the community board is satisfied with that approach, that Bill takes over the chair, then we just move into that process now. And we've already had this process in a few of the boards across North Lancashire, but we're happy to move into that process, and we'll continue dialogue with Bill and Alan going forward in relation to the role of the chair. But if the board's happy to progress that way, then we just make that change at the moment.
Bill, consider the torch being passed to you. You are now the chair of the meeting. I will put my mute on, as everyone else should have at this point, so that we can participate. Congratulations, Bill, and if I can be of any assistance to you in your role as chair, I'll be more than happy to help give you power to your elbow. That is, I know it's sharp, but I'll be happy to join it. All the best, Bill.
Thank you very much, Heather, and thank you for chairing these meetings, the last two meetings and the start of this one. I had been, because I'm involved in so many meetings and so many groups in the community, I'd been sitting back hoping that somebody else in the community would pick up the gauntlet and run with it. But by the third meeting, it was obvious nobody was going to do that. Not like with broken arms or broken legs or something in this line. So since Neil's here, we're not going to go down that road. But so the key thing is that the community board is for the people of Kilsyth, and we've got to try and encourage the people of Kilsyth to come onto the board. Now, just now, these are few and far between, but we need to publicise the board and publicise what we're doing and what we're trying to achieve. So we'll work at that, and we'll work in between board meetings to try and encourage a bigger audience. Yes. So going from that to General Community Board business and updates, item 5, driving digital locally. Lorraine, could you enlighten us? That intrigued both Alan and I as to what's going to happen.
Okay, so Matt and I are going to do a double act, and Matt's going to put the slides up and I'm going to talk to them. So it'll probably only take about 10 minutes, and then obviously happy to answer any questions that you have. So just to introduce myself, my name's Lorraine Brown. Actually, I'm part of the Digital NL programme, so I'm the Business Change Manager, and had been responsible for trying to roll that out across the council. So thanks very much for inviting me tonight to talk about the council's digital agenda, and hopefully explore with you any training and access needs and how we can work with you to address these. If you've got any questions at all, just drop them into the chat bar and I'll pick them up at the end. And if I don't know the answers, I'll get back to you with the response very quickly. Matt, would you mind moving on to the next slide, please? So as you are all aware, the council has established 9 community boards across North Lanarkshire Council as part of our framework for working with the communities, and it provides a structure for local decision making, investment and also accountability. So we thought that this board probably provides the best platform to begin our discussions around the digital developments and inclusion in the Kilsyth area. A key objective from the outset of the Digital NL programme was really all about community involvement and making sure that we work with the communities to help roll the new sort of way of working out. Matt, would you mind moving on to the next one, please? So tonight I'm going to outline the council's digital ambitions and how we roll these out at a local level. I'll also be asking at the end for your help in trying to promote the benefits of digitisation and how you could get involved, or your group members, neighbours, family, anybody really that can help promote the whole sort of digitisation of the council. It's fair to say we've probably been quite lucky because of the COVID situation. A lot of the council services have had to move online, and it's really just how we build in that, but also making sure that we don't exclude anybody that might be digitally sort of either not have access to digital or just not comfortable in using it. And the aim really of the community boards and us working with you is to make sure that nobody's left out or excluded. Mark, could you move on to the slide 4, please? So what we're going to do here is just tell you a bit about the council's progress so far. Mark, can we have slide 5, please? Matt, sorry. So this is the Digital NL programme, but it's also the part of the plan for North Lanarkshire, which hopefully most of you will be familiar with. And you'll see the programmes of work down the left-hand side are all related to what we're trying to do across the Digital NL programme. So primarily it's a transformation programme. We're trying to, as it said, transform really the council and move it sort of as much online as possible so that people can do things at a time that suits them. But another key strand to that is the whole communication and engagement activity, and that, as I say, is one of the purposes of using the community boards to try and get the message out. Some of you will be aware that we set up in November last year a customer services hub, and that's really a dedicated sort of, I suppose, telephone service for people that can't do things online. So we still do have a route in to help people get access. We're also looking to try and upskill our digital workforce. So we recognise that a lot of our workforce don't have digital skills. They've not really had to use digital skills. So for some of our frontline staff, so there's a big training programme. And then the other part of that's around business intelligence, and that's all about sharing information. And obviously, again, sort of quite relevant to sort of communities. If we've got information, and obviously if it's not sort of sensitive, there's no reason why we can't sort of share that and do some analytics around it. Matt, could we go on to slide 6, please? So you'll see the sort of when we kicked off the Digital NL programme probably about 2 years ago, we identified that there was 5 key areas of sort of work, if you like. So it was a digital economy. And we're obviously sort of really keen to try and attract inward investment and expansion into North Lanarkshire. And we thought we could do that through improved connectivity and also faster broadband access. We know that is an issue for a lot of communities. We wanted to use the digital technology to support people, to help them to live independently for longer if they're in their own homes, just as an example. And also to give peace of mind to family members through alerts, for example, if a elderly relative has fallen. So we're doing quite a lot around the sort of smart technology, and is there things that we can do better to allow that to happen. We also want you we wanted it to be easier for you to be able to make contact with the council. So traditionally councils have been sort of open 9 to 5. And with people working in different things, that's not always been that easy. So our sort of idea was to try and put as many of our services online so that you could report things online, you could check status of any inquiries and things online, and that's actually well underway. One sort of issue that we've had is we wanted to do a lot more with sort of community engagement as we were rolling it out, but obviously because of the pandemic, it's been hard to sort of get face-to-face, but we have done things with sort of the tenants' participation in different things, just to try and let people know what it is that we're actually doing. And as I said, one of our other focuses is we're trying to upskill our workforce as well. And that will hopefully let us use some of the automation tools to free up resources. Also avoid duplication. We know that we get a lot of feedback saying that you tell the council one area, one thing, and then you have to tell somebody else something else. So if we can try and join up all our systems and our services, that will make that much easier for people. So Matt, could we move on to slide 7, please? So we've come up with a strapline which is driving digitally locally, and again sort of links very closely with the boards. So whatever we're doing, we want it to be meaningful for you and your communities. Matt, could we have slide 8, please? So what does this mean for you? So it's all about supporting our communities and working with the individual community boards, as we recognise that one size doesn't fit all. And we want to work with you to identify what your digital needs might be specifically in your area. So obviously in Kilsyth. We want to build digital capable and confident communities, and we want people to be able to take advantage of new job opportunities in the technology sector, and to ensure that children and young people are equipped and able to participate fully in digital learning. And I'll say a bit about what we're trying to do in that area later on. Could we have slide 9, please, Matt? So what do we know so far? We certainly know that this isn't easy. And there was stakeholder engagement around the local outcome improvement plan just before Christmas. And the feedback from that showed that all 9 community board areas actually identified digital inclusion as one of their key priorities. 6 areas identified affordability as a key concern. And we also identified the need to ensure that people have broad digital skills. That was raised in 6 areas, with 3 highlighting the importance for the more elderly people. So while it's recognised that the opportunities such as team meetings and WebEx, which we're using tonight, are great for involving wider community audiences, there is a risk that people who are not digitally connected may be left out, and that's what we're keen to work with the communities on. Matt, could we have slide 10, please? So where are we now? I mean, there has been a lot of work done to date. A good example is just the community boards, and I think when they were kicked off, it wasn't possible to do face-to-face meetings. So very quickly, people have got used to doing things online. And we've had over 300 attendees, and approximately 1,100 live streams or recordings have been viewed, which I think is very positive. And the area that I said I was going to sort of focus is through the Connecting Scotland and the Scottish Government, we've actually provided to date 1,845 devices to individuals and families who don't have access to computers. And we've also rolled out devices to a lot of school kids who, again, their homes didn't have computers or tablets or allow them to do online learning. So the council's been doing quite a lot of work, obviously in conjunction with the government, to try and get devices out to people, and also get the ability for them to be able to do things online. So could we, Mark, could we do now slide 11, please? And then just move on to 12. So how can you help? So the reason I was here tonight was to try and sort of engage with you and hopefully get you to work with us. So we're wanting to invite you to get on board and work with us to help that the communities are digitally included, confident, capable and connected. So we would ask if you could encourage your groups that you're involved in, family, friends, or just people who are feeling excluded or simply don't understand or are lacking in digital confidence. If you could signpost them to our digital champions, either help them out. The libraries do quite a lot. I know a lot of the libraries are closed at the moment, but there's also help there for people to get online and go in there and do different things. So that's something that we're really keen that you do try and promote, and also let us know if there is issues, and we'll do what we can to help. For some of you who may have accessed some of the new services we've got online, we've got a new council website, which hopefully you're finding much easier to navigate. And also what we wanted to do was get people to sign up for My Account. So My Account's a government initiative, and it's trying to join up lots of different services so that you give the information once, and then you're sort of registered and you can go on and request services. At the moment, we've really focused on waste services. So we've put a lot of the forums that people used to have to phone about or email. We've actually put them online, and you can go in and request a number of services. And we're obviously looking to add additional ones onto that. The next lot will be around roads and all the sort of environmental type queries that you might have. Matt, could we have number 14, please? So really what we're asking is that you could join. We've got a digital subgroup, and we're wanting to work with people in the communities that will help us shape our digital agenda to ensure it meets the needs and aspirations of the communities. So if you're interested in getting involved, we have a digital NL mailbox, which you could drop a line. You can also contact me or Matt, and he'll get the details to us, and we'll get back in touch with you. But it would be really good if we could get some people from some of the community boards just to help us champion the whole of the digital agenda. So that was all I was hoping to cover, but I'm more than happy to answer any questions if you've got any. Thank you.
Did anybody hear that? As I said, thanks very much, Lorraine. That was quite fascinating, and hopefully we'll work away at that over the next 6 months. Alan, you wanted to speak.
Yes, very, very interesting presentation there. One of the things that we've discovered trying to get some of the groups on board is a deep-rooted suspicion of any kind of online platform. And getting over this could be problematic, because like everything else these days, there's an awful lot of fake news being bandied about with regard to how secure these platforms are. I think looking at what you're proposing to do is excellent, particularly given the moves ahead from Lanarkshire Health Board with regard to remote diagnosis. And, for example, they're looking at a new methodology for contacting out of hours, and much of that will be online. So I think it really is most important that we get as many folk up and running and happy with this medium. But the problem I really was concerned about was the suspicion that folk have about the safety of online chats like this, and how we try and alleviate their fears.
Lorraine?
Yeah, so the platform that we are using within the council has been built on Microsoft 365, and as most of you all know, Microsoft's obviously a huge organisation, and security's its most important aspect. So there's lots and lots of organisations use, and all of the data is stored on the cloud, so it's not held in data centres within the council. It is all sort of very secure, and that's why we're trying to encourage the use of my account, because people will register. They'll get an email back to their own personal email. They'll then click on the link, and that takes them to the next stage of authentication. So it is an authenticated platform that can only let the people that actually have the details. And it's also married up with council information that we already hold for you. So I would quite confidently say that the platform that we're using is 100% secure.
Thanks, Lorraine. Janet, you had your hand up. Janet? No? No. Right, any more questions to Lorraine? Right, okay, Lorraine, thank you very much indeed. Would it be possible to send a copy of that presentation
Yeah, no problem. Matt will do that for you. That's
That'd
fine.
be excellent. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much.
Are you going to stay for the rest of the meeting?
No, I'm not. I'm going to go, but before I leave, I'll put my email address into your chat bar. So if anybody did want to get in contact after tonight's meeting, I'm more than happy to follow up with them direct.
Grand. Thanks very much
Okay,
indeed.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, have a
Bye.
nice night. Bye.
Right, item 6, general updates. Terms of reference, feedback. Christine.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to give a wee quick update on where we're at with the terms of reference. Now, the terms of reference itself, the same kind of broad base was approved by the Council's Policy and Strategy Committee. There is a need for strict governance, and we want to use that as a basis for developing the boards. In terms of kind of points that have been raised, first of all, I want to say thank you to all the people who have responded and given us their feedback, which is great. In terms of points that have been raised, there was points raised about voting rights, and the voting rights themselves need to reflect the elected representation on the board. It is preferable that decisions are made through consensus based on clear evidence and community engagement processes. Voting would be very much a last resort if consensus couldn't be reached, but we would be looking for consensus to be reached on any kind of points that were raised. In terms of language and terminology, a number of points were raised on that. What we intend to do is to look at any abbreviations. We will explain them fully. We'll also provide a glossary of terms at the end of the document so that it clarifies and helps people to understand what's been said. We'll take on board all of the comments that have been fed back to us, and we'll recirculate with amendments. And we are happy for the terms of reference to be adopted. Hopefully, if people are happy with those, then you can get back to us and let us know how you feel about that once it's been recirculated. That's all I wanted to say, Chair. Thank you.
Right, thanks very much, Christine. Any questions to Christine? Alan?
Just I understand what you're saying, that you'd rather have consensus than things constantly going to votes, which is ideal. But you're wondering just do you have a ceiling number for the number of core members on any board, or is that flexible?
Matt, do you want to answer that one?
Can I come in? At the moment, we're trying to encourage as many people as we can to attend the boards just now, but in terms of it comes to voting, the way we're looking at the voting at the moment is that the number of community groups should relate to the number of elected members who apply to each of the boards for each of the different board areas. Alan, so that's the approach just now that we're undertaking for the community boards at the moment. So in this board, in this community board, we have 3 elected members, so we would have 3 community groups who would be represented. So that would be community councils, community forum, tenants and residents association would appoint somebody to have a voting right within there, but more members are more than welcome to attend the meeting. We would need to look at different ways of how that would be voting. If it came from, for example, to say community councils voting, it would really depend on how the community councils wanted to take that forward en masse on that basis. But it's to match the number of elected members who are currently in that board area.
Any further questions to Christine? Okay, board development sessions, Matt.
Thanks, Chair. Just what we're doing this is just very briefly, just what we're looking to do is, as you go through the boards, there'll be a number of things that will come to the board that a lot of people might feel they could benefit from having more information in relation to it. Just the presentation earlier there about driving digital locally is an example. Another example can be community asset transfer, participatory budgeting, community safety issues, community asset transfer, for example. Just a number of some examples of things that might come across the board agendas. So what we're hoping to do after this cycle of board meetings is to have board development sessions and give people opportunity to come along to board development sessions and hear more about specific issues like the things I mentioned earlier, to give people an opportunity to decide which things they're interested in hearing more about, and get a better understanding of the things they're going to be asked to consider as the board moves forward. So it's just to let people know that once this cycle's completed and the 9 boards have been completed, we will be devising a number of board development sessions going forward. But if any partner MD here today has got any ideas of any particular issues they would like to be covered on that, then please let us know about that, and we'll ensure that's included in the board development sessions going forward. And we can, as many people can come along to that as well. We'll have a number of sessions. There'll be sessions across. It won't just be a session for Kilsyth, it'll be sessions for a number of boards. We'll set a few dates and people can come along to that. We'll have speakers who will come along from ourselves, from the council, from other partners, from Voluntary Action North Lanarkshire, who'll be able to give an input on that basis. But if anybody's interested in attending that, we'll be in touch with you soon in relation to the dates about that. But if anybody's got any specific issues they'd like to see covered, then please let us know and we'll make sure that's included in the board development sessions going forward.
Right, thanks very much, Matt. I would certainly commend anybody to contact you regarding these training programmes. It would be well worthwhile. But in the meantime, anybody got any questions to Matt regarding the development sessions? We okay? Item 6.3, local development programme. You're on again, Matt.
Yeah, myself again, Chair. Thanks for that. This copy of this report was distributed to everybody before the meeting, so it's just to let people know where we are currently with the projects that have been taken forward in the Kilsyth area. You'll see in Appendix 1 the couple of projects still outstanding. One in relation to Rennie Road, other to the local nature reserve. There's work being ongoing in relation to those projects, and in Appendix 2 you'll see a number of projects that have been previously proposed at locality partnership meetings or community boards, and you'll see a number of projects in there where we're looking to take forward in the event of funding becoming available. It's just one thing to emphasise that as it stands at the moment, there's no budget being fully approved for the local development programme going forward. We're hoping to get more information in relation to that over the next couple of weeks, and we'll be able to feed that back out with the board cycles so that the board is aware of where we are with that. Just to update people, that's where we are at the moment with the local development programme, Chair, but happy to take any questions.
Anyone got any questions to Matt regarding that report? Right, Matt, a couple on Appendix 1, the wheeled sports area up at Rennie Road. Now that's shown as a potential cost of 57,000. There's contracts to be awarded. Do you know what stage that's at? You're on mute, Matt.
It's still going through the last I checked with that one, Chair, that was going through the tendering process. The contracts are being assessed for that just now. I can get an update on that as soon as I can. I'll feed that back to the board. But we get through the process of putting out, you'll be aware, we put out the tender, they come back in, we'll assess the tenders and then determine the best way forward on that. But the project it's online for being delivered and starting on the ground as soon as possible. But I'll get some dates on that and feed back to you.
Right. I know Dumbreck's an ongoing project.
Yeah.
Just on since our last meeting, community safety CCTV was put on at a project budget of 20,000. What's that about? Do you know?
Yeah, this is something that we're trying to do across all the 9 board areas, and some we've found to be very successful in the areas that we've supported the team in the town centre activities, as they were, who work now within the housing service, who monitor our public space CCTV. And every area has had, we're looking to every area to have a relatively small budget that allows us to work with local communities to identify areas where there's hotspots, that in conjunction with police colleagues and in other emergency services, fire and rescue, for example, we may be able to implement some CCTV programmes within particular areas that might benefit community safety in the area. And the idea behind that is to have approval, and in principle approval, for a budget that allows us then to engage with community safety partners to determine whether or not we can deliver on that in some areas. We've got some really good success stories. I'll be able to do that across the board, and it's just hopeful we can do that in this area too.
Right, thanks very much. Okay, Heather?
Hi, Matt. It's just on the CCTV project. I support it generally, but is this for static or for potential mobile? Because I think the area could potentially benefit from cameras that can be located in multiple, standards, lamp standards, whatever we call them these days, because in Kilsyth we don't call them lampposts. Sure. Where would we put them across? Because I know that there's a couple of areas, whether it be the archways, whether it be at the Bogside, Kicklands area, whether it be on Rainy, whether it be multiple areas, but there'd be the opportunity, or indeed at the Highland Park area, when we could see our scrambling gentlemen appearing at times, perhaps to be able to identify them. Mobile cameras rather than static, I think, would be appreciated. But sure, happy to discuss with the statutory agencies and indeed the community where they should go.
Absolutely. The answer to that is both. We tend to use whatever is deemed to be the most appropriate for the specific area they're looking at. Just to very quickly give you a couple of examples in the last 6 months where we have used redeployable cameras, as we call them, the ones that we can move, leave it in there for a short period of time. It usually has an impact on a temporary issue that's been experienced, and therefore we can take it away from there and move it about. So we have in the past purchased a number of those cameras that are kept with the Town Centre Activities colleagues, and then we just call on them as and when we need them to be moved around the area. But we've also had some other examples where we have put in, for example, in Plains, where in the last 2 or 3 years, we've put in a number of fixed cameras that have really helped cover the village of Plains to the extent that it's now almost got over 90% CCTV coverage in an area very much community-led as to where that should be, in conjunction particularly with the police and fire, who identified particular areas they had of willful fire raising and antisocial behaviour in the area. So we were able to do that. And very quickly, again, just about redeployable, to give an example of that, with one in New Mains where we had an issue in an area in New Mains where a shop and a play area where there was some particular issues of antisocial behaviour, where we put a camera in there for about 9 months and had a very, very positive impact on the complaints that have been raised in an area. So there is benefits to both, and we hope to have if we have a budget available, we're flexible in how we use that and taking it forward.
Thanks, Matt. Alan?
Just wondering if there's any additional information available as a background for example, there's a heritage project. What's that about? I know it's been approved in principle. The Fountain and Colosseum's been around for quite a while. That's been an ongoing project, but there are 1 or 2 of these where it would be quite interesting to get a wee bit more background information.
Do we know offhand about that heritage project, Matt?
If I could, maybe my colleague here, Leanne Pollock, who may have some more idea about some of the projects that Liam is involved in for these, maybe give us some background. But what we can do, as I say, for a future report, we might be able to, if we've got more information, we can add another column to that report and give a wee bit more background information in there. Maybe in the meantime, Leanne could give a wee update on that.
Yeah, if you remember a couple of years ago, we had circulated an app for local organisations and groups to feedback. That had come back in, and I can't remember off the top of my head exactly what organisation that it came from, but it came back in as part of that
Right.
project. It might actually, now that I'm thinking it might have been, remember we talked about maybe doing something to do with some of the tiles, reinstating some of the tiles in the towns, I think in the town centre, and there was kind of stones and tiles that I think that maybe had been there and people were looking to maybe reinstate them. But I suppose just to say that what would happen now, Matt can kind of clarify this, what would happen now would be if and when a budget became available, the discussion through the board, just automatically that project would go ahead. It would be a bit of discussion around, well, because it might be that something else has happened since that means that that's not so much of a priority anymore. But consultation, asked for ideas, like try and trace back and feed into Matt about exactly where the idea came from.
But I think maybe one of the things that we'll do out with the meeting is that Matt and ourselves could get together and just look at how these projects get put on there and what kind of system puts them on with a better description. So without tying down the meeting in detail like that, we could have a separate meeting on it next week sometime, if everybody's agree with that.
I'll just come in on that very quickly, Chair. We do have a forum that we use that we've got now in place that gives ideas for people who are interested in proposing a project to us.
Right.
Ask about the detail of the project, the background, any consultation that's taking place, potential costs, location, etc. We do have that in place now, and that's again information we use. We do have design briefs. These projects, when they go forward, design briefs are created. We do local consultation on the projects as well. So there is a process already in place. You might only see there the start of a project, where it's going and the end of it, but behind the scenes there is a lot of work goes into actually deliver the projects going forward. But I'm happy to share that information with you.
Grand, super. Okay, any more questions to Matt? No. So do we approve the report? Can I have a proposer? Heather, seconder, Alan, thank you very much. Item 6.4, local outcome improvement plans, the LOIPs. Colin?
Up. I'm just going with you a couple of slides. There's just a few. There's not many, just a couple, just to provide you a wee bit of update on where we are. But the blooming presentation seems to have disappeared now. Just give me a wee second to let that up. Colin, are you able to put that up? It's not letting me share, and I'll. So really we're just here to provide a wee bit of an update on where we are with the development of the local outcome improvement plans. We've got, I think it's maybe 6 slides just to kind of give a wee update on that and where we are with in Kilsyth. Colin and Gary Stark have been working with a few members of the community board to take that work forward, and I think they've met once so far. And about to have their second meeting quite soon. So there's the presentation just coming up now. I'll take you through that very briefly. So okay, Colin, see if you just go down to the wee bit at the bottom for sharing the slideshow. Actually see, or if you go into the first slide. So as I said, Colin and Gary have been doing a wee bit of work with a short life working group, and it would be my hope that it wouldn't be a council officer that would be providing updates in future, that it would actually group would provide the update. But because we're still kind of going through the process of getting that work established, we're just taking you through this for tonight. So just to recap, the aim is to co-produce plans for each of the 9 community boards community need. We're focused on intervention, maximising use of shared resources across the partnership. These plans are should belong to communities, but the support for delivering them should sit across all of the community planning partners. But ultimately, what's really important to remember is that these plans must be focused on those experiencing highest levels of inequalities within our community. So there needs to be action in there that shows how we're targeting resources to inequality. So sorry, Colin, I wasn't finished that slide. So the phase 1 was about mapping the kind of key priorities for council services and partner agencies to look at kind of bigger priorities, but that were really important at a locality level. Phase 2 was stakeholder engagement, and phase 3 involved wider community engagement. Next slide. So where we're at right now is we're just entering phase 4. So community board meeting, we provided information on all of the community and stakeholder engagement and the feedback that came back. And if you remember, there was a lot of information there. That report contained loads of information on what communities had been telling us. So what we're doing now is we're working with the community boards through a short life working group. That group will be meeting between now and kind of May time probably, to look at all of the feedback that's come back, all the data and intelligence that's available from that community engagement, to start discuss or to discuss and identify the emerging themes, and to identify what the priorities might be for Kilsyth, because this is about your local plan. So there might be some things, like as we said earlier, digital is reflected in almost in every area actually, but it's still a kind of bigger priority across North Lanarkshire. There may well be things that come out that are very local to Kilsyth, and that's absolutely fine. And it's about starting to look at what those kind of the solutions and actions would be at a locality level, and that might be a mixture of very localised community-led action, or it might be, well, what's the connection between us identifying digital NL as digital equality as a priority, and how that kind of fits with the bigger digital NL priorities. Is it maybe just about the connection and us making sure that work for the wider programme is localised? So there's probably a mix of actions. There might be some actions that are much more about how we engage further with a particular community to develop actions at a later stage, or there might be some that we know what the solutions are and we just need to all get our heads together to make it happen. So next slide, Colin. So this is kind of behind each of the priority areas. You probably can't see that, and I will circulate it to you at a later date. But basically this is, about how we make sure that there's plenty of information around what that priority is, the actions associated, timescales, how to report on it, what does it mean to local communities, is it a short-term action, a medium, a longer term, and this is what we'll bring to the community board in terms of a progress update. So it'll be a lot tighter in terms of, we said this was a priority, we said these were the actions, we said this is what we're going to achieve the first few years, we said this is what we achieve longer term. So at the community boards, we would hope that your agenda would then start to reflect what those priorities are, and the reporting and the feedback that you were receiving would be around those priorities, not just from council officers, but from local organisations who might be leading on a certain priority, or other partner agencies. Next slide. So some of the work that's been happening today with the Short Life Working Group, and through looking at all that community engagement activity, has identified a number of priorities. So some of these might be a surprise, some of them might not. I'm sure people who live in Kilsyth will be more than familiar with these. So things like community transport, digital inclusion, food poverty, financial insecurity, health and social care, town environmental improvements, and the next slide, I think there's a couple extra, COVID-19 recovery and community engagement and consultation. So starting to identify key themes in there. Some of them are quite specific, some of them are quite broad. So I suppose if we go on to the next slide, it's about, well, what's the next steps? Okay, we identify what the priorities are. How do we get from saying that's a priority to having all the detail that we would like in that template that we showed you earlier? So the Short Life Working Group, the plan is that they'll continue to meet March to kind of May, June time to work on the action plans and to engage with partners to agree a proposed approach to developing actions under each priority. So it's not necessarily about those people who are sitting in that group knowing the answer to everything. It's about them identifying what the priorities are, and then them maybe saying, right, okay, this is a priority and we're talking about poverty here, but actually there's a lot of work right now to develop a tackling poverty action plan in North Lanarkshire. There are loads of organisations delivering in North Lanarkshire work that's very targeted to poverty. Maybe it's about bringing a couple of people, kind of key people together from both that very strategic to the very localised, to have a bit of a discussion, debate about, right, well, what does this mean? What's already happening in the area? Because what we don't want is to duplicate or create structures when there's actually already a really good structure there at a locality level. So I suppose it's about that Short Life Working Group going through each of the priorities one at a time and saying who needs to be involved in discussion about this, so that we can start to identify what the actions are and how we might measure those actions. And as I said earlier, it might be that some it's very local led, very practical actions. It might be some that's actually that we know that's a priority, but we don't feel we know enough about it, so we need to do a bit further engagement on it. Or it might be, well, actually there's quite a robust process in place for delivering on that. Maybe the most important thing is what the relationship is between that process that's already in place in the community board, and whether there's a requirement for regular reports. So the aim is to have the draft plans outlining the priorities and development leads for each agreed priority by April. then to have a community board session, because we think in these big meetings with the big agendas, it can be quite difficult sometimes to really get in about the level of discussion that we probably need to have to make these plans work. So the plan is that once we've got the draft plans, to organise a separate focused community board session for April, May to present the draft plan and allow just a focused discussion just around that, and also to, in the lead up to that and round about that, to make the draft plans available for wider community comment. The initial plans we would hope would then be approved and published from June, July. So when the community board meets, I think kind of around about June time, we would be able to hopefully present the final plan to be endorsed, and then say, right, we can now publish the plans. Priorities to the plans should then become part of the community board agenda, and we would hope that your subgroups would reflect that if there was a need for a subgroup, but obviously if there's a structure already existing, it's about how it reports in. And progress will be monitored and reported regularly, and as through this process, these are about local plans, but they also meet the requirements of the Community Empowerment Act around locality planning. So we are already required to produce an annual report, which is probably a good thing for the community boards as well in terms of that accountability. So we will be annually, there'll be a report produced to highlight successes, achievements, and any proposed amendments and improvements to the plans moving forward. So that's just a very quick whistle-stop tour of where we're at with the development of the plans. And I said the short life working groups will meet several times before the next community board meeting, or before the LOIP session that we have with the community boards. And I would hope by that stage that maybe some of the, it wouldn't be myself necessarily feeding back on this, but maybe some of the community reps would want to kind of take the lead in terms of the presenting and reporting. Happy to take any questions or comments, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Leanne. Colin, can you take down the presentation? Thank you. Leanne, the, what do you call it, the LOIP group that's working in Kilsyth, we have our third meeting on Thursday. So Colin has been driving us hard. He's got a 12-foot bullwhip that he keeps hammering us with. Yes. So he's a hard man, is Colin. So we have got a third meeting, and we will continue to pursue that to the conclusion. One of the things that we did pick up is that there are other plans that need to be taken account of, and that, well, in Kilsyth, the main one there is the Kilsyth and Kelvin Valley Framework and Action Plan. That needs to be slotted in to show that the LOIP is more a development plan rather than another framework and action plan. It needs to be something that's going to be actioned on then. Any questions to Leanne? No, we okay there? Right, thanks very much, Leanne. Christine, the board reference oblique subgroups.
Okay, thanks, Chair. I just want to kind of reiterate a wee bit that Leanne had said there about the board subgroups should really link to the kind of LOIP. So whatever priorities are coming out of that, really we should start to kind of look at some of the subgroups round about that. And certainly, again, I would reiterate the fact that we don't want to duplicate anything. We want to make sure that if it's already in existence, then we would look at that. For example, I know previously people had mentioned about having a youth subgroup, but there's already a structure in place for young people in terms of North Lanarkshire Youth Council and Youth Forum. So we'd hope to link with those moving forward as well. In terms of kind of suggestions that have been put forward, as I mentioned there was potential for a youth subgroup. Community safety was raised as an issue. Town visions, and I know local people have been involved in some of the kind of town vision meetings that have taken place. LDP was another one that was put forward. So again, some of the conversation that's been discussed tonight around about LDP, that kind of maybe fits in with what people were thinking, and certainly moving forward, some of the points that Leanne had raised in terms of the LOIP. I mean, community transport, if that's an issue, then that's the kind of things that we would want to look at a kind of subgroup moving forward. So all I would want to say is, obviously, if people are interested, or if they've got a particular interest in one of these types of subjects, so where it's community transport and you're really keen to take that forward, then we're happy to find out who would be interested in doing that. We don't need to lead these subgroups. I think we're looking for people who have got the skills, experience, the knowledge to be able to kind of take them forward, and we would provide as much support as we can to enable that to happen. Happy to take any questions, Chair. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Christine. Any questions to Christine regarding that? David?
Well, Christine, you mentioned the different subgroups, community groups. Going forward, is it something we can put together a contacts list so we can interact with each other? You know, I heard you mention the youth subgroup there. I'd be quite interested to hear about ways we can better engage with them. So I think going forward, kind of contact list of the various groups would be helpful.
Chair, if that's okay, I'll just say, yeah, of
Yes.
course we could do that. If people are happy to have their information circulated, then we can certainly do that. I know we've got a rep on. I don't know where she's went actually. Lindsay Weir was on earlier, and she's the link from here to the youth forums. But we can certainly pass that information on if people are happy for us to do so.
Yeah, I would certainly be interested to hear if there is a youth group part of that organisation based in Kilsyth, because I'm not aware of any at this stage, or anybody from Kilsyth that's on the North Lanarkshire one. I know Lindsay's the link, but the practical element is there anybody in Kilsyth actually on it? So we'll develop that, and yes, we'll get a contacts list sorted out, David. Any other questions? Right. Item 7, consultation plans around town and community hubs. Matt?
Thanks, Chair. It was just to make people aware, we've already sent out information to a number of people, and maybe somebody on the board have received information just with the briefing for the Kilsyth board area will take place a week tonight, Monday the 8th of March, 6:30. And there's a link being sent out for the Eventbrite ticket booking process for that. It's just encourages people to attend that if possible next Monday evening.
Thanks, Matt. Yes, I've certainly circulated it and probably duplicated it because I sent it to all the schools and the PTAs and Uncle Tom Cobbler and all, but I intend to do it again in the middle of this week, just as a reminder to get as many people as we can coming along to it. Petitions, no petitions. Hopefully we're not going to encourage petitions. Hopefully we'll deal with the problem before it gets to actual petition stage. Right, item 9, community matters. Cancellation of satellite hub in Kilsyth. I think that's been overtaken by events. I must admit, NHS Lanarkshire was extremely difficult to deal with. And I even suggested to the Chief Exec that she gets in touch with the Chief Exec of North Lanarkshire Council and has a chat on how to deal with the community and what the community expect and how I think how well North Lanarkshire has changed in communicating with us in the community. But I ended up at Muirfield myself and can't fault the system at all. No problems at all. I know Alan had some difficulties, but when he got to the establishment, there was no problems at all. I just don't know whether the satellite hub is going to be used again or whether that is finished. Alan?
Following up from an exchange of information with Lanarkshire Health Board from numerous folk, they still get back with a few questions with regard to the possibility of using a satellite hub in the future, and also I think looking at the possibility of using the health centre. A lot of people are surprised that the health centre wasn't used. I'm sure there'll be reasons put forward why it wasn't, but we know the problems that folk have. We know the travel difficulties in particular, and the poor communication. So folk in Kilsyth don't understand why they have to go to Muirfield for this service, no matter how good it is. There was the biggest problem, I think, was one of communication earlier on, where there was all sorts of mixed messages about whether or not there was a hub in Garrelvale or not. People have been told it was fully booked. People were being told that it had been cancelled, and there seemed to be a problem getting the information in the national helpline. Hopefully, with all the correspondence that's been had with the Lanarkshire Health Board, that won't happen again. But I think we still would be interested to hear if it is possible to have some kind of satellite within the town for future use.
Right, thanks, Alan. Heather?
Thanks very much, Bill. Like yourselves at the Community Council, the Kilsyth and Villages Forum, myself and Jean, separately and together, have been writing to various email addresses and indeed to the Chief Executive of NHS Lanarkshire to articulate a number of concerns and questions that have been raised directly with each of us. I'm sure some of them the same, some different. Part of the challenge that we're getting at the moment is Garrelvale has been underused and underutilised. The community of Kilsyth has been blamed for not wanting to use it. Wholly untrue. Had Garrelvale been highlighted as a primary vaccination site, it would have been more than abundantly used by this community. We are in the situation where the helpline is asking people with complex health needs, and indeed in each of the priority groups, who have not had a member of their family across their threshold since last March, a year ago, to car share for a member of their family just to give them a lift up. So the line is contradicting the guidance that's been given to people. The need to book, cancel and then rebook to a local venue, then to be told at a later date that that venue is no longer available and that appointment can no longer be sustained, has caused people immense distress and anxiety, and has put them straight back into the same problem of falling into one of two categories. I either can travel because I have my own transport, or I can't travel and have difficulty because I don't. We cannot live in a world of have and have-nots. And I appreciate that there are local voluntary organisations and others offering now to give folk a transport. But the infrastructure to support this has been too little too late. And my concern is this is getting worse. We're moving on to a super centre approach in Lanarkshire to get high vaccination numbers. Again, if you are able to get in a car and get to a vaccination centre, folk in our community were directed to Christen, a community smaller than ours, to get a vaccination because of its unique location. Yet the Health Board has not taken cognisance of our unique location. I know of residents who live in Banton who could not get by public transport to the vaccination centre because it was on a Sunday, and there is no indirect transport, never mind direct transport to that centre. Any form of local knowledge could have answered these questions before we got there. We weren't asked, we weren't informed. When we were told Kilsyth was going to be a pop-up, I was willing to be open-minded and say, well, if the community are interested, we're big enough to be able to make sure that we utilise that. It hasn't been done because folk were afraid to have a delay in getting the vaccine. So they utilised the transport, and some people who have to be out the house in a year were getting in public transport. The risk and anxiety and stress that put people under, wholly unacceptable. I continue to correspond with my new pen friend, Heather Knox, on a regular basis. And I'm delighted with what people are saying is this process has been hellish, but the staff at the vaccination centre were lovely. So I'm really pleased that the folk at the coalface who are really dealing with the vaccinations aren't getting the brunt of people's frustration. But we have real logistical issues. These are these haven't gone away, and we continue as a community to need to join together and stand up to try and get better programme. Public purse money has been used to put infrastructure into Garrow Vale. Risk assessments have been done to make sure that that's right. Garrow Vale should be used, and Garrow Vale should be used again, in my opinion.
Thanks, Heather. Alan? You're on mute, Alan.
Sorry, there was a problem with something over the surface. I fully endorse what Heather's saying there. I thought the final insult was having booked Garrow Vale, been told that it had been cancelled, rebooked Muirfield, then tried to book Garrow Vale only to be told it was fully booked, was to arrive at Muirfield to be told by a very delightful nurse, because as Heather says, my wife hasn't been out over the threshold for most of the year, and to be met by a delightful nurse who said, "What are you doing up here? Do you not know we've got a pop-up centre in Garrow Vale?" And I thought that just put the tin lid on it. However, I'm still waiting, hopefully, for Heather Knox's reply to my last letter. It's only been 10 days, so it should come through anytime soon. But this is typical. The fact that we're putting in, I think, legitimate questions, looking for answers, and we are not getting these timiously. I think it's deplorable.
Right, thanks very much, Alan, and thanks, Heather, for your comments there. I would endorse these because it's been quite a frustrating time, not just for me, but for everybody. And then we're going to have the second inoculation and similar problems. Jean, do you want to comment there?
Just to say, I mean, as Heather said, we're both in daily correspondence. I now just need to type in the first letter of the email address for the health board, and it comes up as my top priority. But what I would say is we've got both Heather and I have been invited to attend a further briefing session with the health board on the 12th of this month. If anybody wants to email us any questions or comments that they want us to raise directly with the health board on that day, more than happy to take them on board. As I say, don't want to add to anything that's been said, because a lot of the cases we're dealing with are individual people's names within them. But yes, it's becoming a daily struggle with the health board. There must be, the minute they see our names come up, say no again, Kilsyth. But you know, at the end of the day, we're fighting for the best for our community, and we'll continue to fight for the best for our community.
I agree, Heather. And Jean, right, if there's nothing else on that, could we go to Laura, the Care Day update? Laura.
Yeah, thanks. So I work with Care Scotland, which is a children's rights-based independent advocacy service. So we work with care experienced young people across the whole of North Lanarkshire. But part of that is that we also have two participation groups of young people, a younger one and an older one. So it was Care Day on the 19th of February. I've got to get that right. And it's just to give you a wee update on some of the stuff that happened within North Lanarkshire that your care experienced community were involved in. So the older group is actually part of North Lanarkshire Champions Board, which is made up of like chief exec, heads of service, and a group of care experienced young people. The first thing that, so with support from North Lanarkshire Council's corporate comms, we released a Care Day video, and it was myself, Superintendent Gordon Keady from Place Scotland, and two of our care experienced young people, and we basically made a video saying what Care Day is and why it's important, and that was released on North Lanarkshire Council's Facebook website and Twitter. Throughout the day, we had some young people that are part of the group that had made some video introductions to themselves and why they're involved in the group and what they hope North Lanarkshire is going to do in terms of making care experience journeys better and any changes they think need in the system. We did a selfie challenge where we were trying to get people to take a selfie with hashtag CareDay21 on their hands, and we were really pleased that NHS got right on board, and we had images from staff at the hospital sending them through as well, so that was brilliant. We had some video messages of support from elected members. So it was Councillor Jordan Linden from Bellsill, and we also had a video from Trudy Marshall, who's the Director of Nursing for NHS Lanarkshire. There was a press release, so we lit up the Civic Centre red as a reflection of colour I love. But as part of the press release, we mentioned the fact that there is now going to be 4 care experience posts. So it'll be development officers, and basically these 4 care experience young people will be working towards how North Lanarkshire implements the promise. So we were really excited about that. We did an art competition with all the residential children's houses in North Lanarkshire, where we got the young people to try and come up with a new logo. So we were really keen to get the young people involved and be happy with some of the artwork, so we dish out some prizes. And we also just released some videos for volunteers just in terms of support. So it was just really to let you know that that's what happened in North Lanarkshire for Care Day.
Thank you very much, Laura. Has anybody any questions or that for Laura? Okay. Right, item 10, input from the community planning partners, updates from police and fire rescue. Neil, have you got anything you want to add just now?
Yes, Chair. Happy to give a wee summary of recent events. The good news is it's actually been a very positive quarter in Ward 1, wherever, as you would expect. There have been a few issues which I'll just kind of summarise. Serious assaults, we had 2 over the last period. The first one was on the 5th of December, and that was in Kilmuir Terrace in Croy. And as a result of that inquiry, there was a 21-year-old male subsequently arrested and charged with serious assault and possession of an offensive weapon. The other serious assault happened on the 1st of February. That was Mance Road in Kilsyth, and in relation to that one, there was a 55-year-old male arrested and charged. Awful fire raisings, unfortunately, we had 2 of them over the period. The first one was in Glasgow Road at Kilsyth on the 7th of January. And many of you will remember that comes after a previous awful fire raising in that area on the 1st of November. Strong suggestion that the 2 incidents are linked. For this most recent incident on the 7th of January, inquiries are still very much ongoing, and we await lab analysis of some items that were seized from the scene of the crime. The other fire raising for this period was within a flat on Rennie Road in Kilsyth on the 21st of January. This was within a block of flats, and thanks to our colleagues in Fire and Rescue Service and their prompt attendance, the block of flats were safely evacuated, fire extinguished, and the police inquiry resulted in a 45-year-old male being arrested, and the good news is he's since been remanded in custody. Theft by housebreaking, very positive in this regard. There's only actually been 1 theft by housebreaking over the last 3-month period. That happened just 4 days before Christmas, when we normally expect a spike, and we've seen certainly that spike in other areas, but Kilsyth seems to be the exception to the rule with the exception of this one. So just 1 theft by housebreaking, Townhead Street that was, where a house was broken into, several items stolen. There's yet to be any arrests for that. Drugs, again, reasonably quiet period in terms of drugs. However, there was an incident the 24th of January, which many will be aware of, which involved a fire at an industrial, well, a couple of industrial units actually, on Mill Road in Banton. Subsequent fire and police examination of the scene revealed that one of these units was being used to house a cannabis cultivation. So it again highlights the the very real, genuine dangers with cannabis cultivations. So inquiry is still ongoing, however, they are making good progress, and there's continued efforts to track down a person of interest in relation to that one. In terms of antisocial issues, a couple of things which many of you are aware of still on the go. Kilsyth Park, together with Kilsyth Town Centre, continues to be a gathering point for local youths. And in fact, not just local youths, but a lot of these kind of meetings seem to be arranged via social media. And we're getting kids from Cumbernauld and indeed across into Kirkintilloch making their way to Kilsyth, unfortunately, to gather. So both these areas continue to be an area of focus for us. We'll be back down there again this Friday and Saturday because the weather forecast appears to be quite reasonable. So that usually means that we have an upsurge in the amount of youths gathering down there. So we'll be back down there this weekend. There has been a wee bit of local press coverage in regards to this, which was supported by local councils and the community council down there. Just basically an appeal to parents and guardians to take a wee bit more ownership and accountability in terms of the whereabouts of their children. Another antisocial issue was mentioned just briefly earlier by Councillor Brannan McVeigh, and that's the issue of off-road bikes. There's been a real spike in that, the amount of reporting of people seeing off-road bikes, various different locations, Kilsyth Academy Grounds, Mid-Barwood Road, Auckland and Croy. We had another report today of an off-road bike being in Croy. The usual pattern is by the time the police get down there, there's no trace of the bike, or the bike is a considerable distance away and it makes off before the police get close to it. So as usual, we're actively looking for any possible information that the community can give us in terms of tracing the riders of these bikes, getting identified and getting that dealt with. So inquiry is ongoing in that regard. And that's it for me in terms of crimes and trends, to be honest.
Thanks very much, Neil. Anybody got any questions for Neil? No. Just, I've got one myself, Neil, which was just when you were talking about there. I remember when the legislation first came out, I was quite heavily involved in the Strathkelvin days, Strathkelvin District Council, in identifying areas and boundaries for the legislation for drinking in public places. I take it that legislation is still in existence. It's not been suspended or anything. So if you find somebody drinking in the main street or in Parkburn Street or whatever, they're actually in Kilsyth, they're actually breaking that bylaw or whatever it is.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's local government bylaws, and that's the legislation that we use. And yes, that's very much still active. I mean, 2 weekends ago, last weekend there, if you remember, the weather wasn't great over the weekend, so there wasn't a great deal of activity in the Kilsyth Park or the town centre. But 2 weekends ago, there were, I think it was 5 youths, in fact, not all just youths, but there were 5 people charged with consuming alcohol in public. So yes, it is legislation that's still up and running and has been used.
Right. It might be something that we'll work on trying to promote that. We'll have a look at that. Janet?
It's just a quick follow-up question to Inspector MacLeod, if I can, just to point out that to the best of my understanding, several residents have contacted Police Scotland offering information on people with the off-road biking, but to date none of them have had any contact with Police Scotland regarding making that information available.
Well, that's an interesting point, Jack, because I had spoken to, just this afternoon, in fact, ahead of this meeting, I'd spoken to the community officer, PC Gibbons, down there, and he assured me that he had been going out of his way to contact all existing reporters for the last couple of weeks in particular. So we'll review that. If you're saying there's people that are still to be contacted, and I find that surprising, to be honest. What I'll do is I'll put my email address up in the chat bar here if you can take a note of it, and feel free to pass that on, and anyone can contact me directly.
Do that. I will make sure that people do that, Neil. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions, Neil? Heather?
I tried to put it in the chat bar, but it came up as in questiono to Neil. So if you would like to interpret this in an Italian accent or whatever suits you, seeing as we're not travelling, feel free. In all seriousness, I have had a number of local people comment to me about noise and disturbances coming from other residences. They have reported that to the police. There's multiple people in the house who don't live there, but the police are appearing to go and not, and what people are saying to me is the police aren't doing anything. So I suppose my question to you is, under the current COVID guidance, we're all supposed to only be in our own house. So I appreciate the police have got an exceptionally hard job to do while keeping themselves safe, as disappointingly you have not been prioritised for vaccine, which I think is wrong, because we're asking you guys to go to places that we're not allowed to go. That aside, what are the police doing when those kind of calls are coming in, when people are causing disturbance and mischief and alarm at times to their neighbours, but there's folk in there that don't live in the house?
Thanks. Yes, no, it's an ongoing issue. To be honest, there's more than ever, because of the current circumstances, we get more and more calls to disturbances and ongoing parties. Because of the nervousness, quite rightly, about gatherings within houses. So there's two things that happen there. In terms of supervisors that are on duty, we expect them to monitor closely any of these calls and monitor the result of that as well. So for instance, if there is a gathering of more than 2 households within a particular address, then we would expect that house to be emptied and executive action to be taken in the form of either tickets issued for COVID breaches or arrests to be made if they still fail to adhere to the legislation. So for example, if somebody refused to leave a household where we went in and there were half a dozen people having a party, if they refused to leave, then we'd be well within our rights to make arrests. So part of my job is I review all the incidents when I come in, and if I see any potential missed opportunities where there's potentially been a party and I see no note of any executive action taken, then I'll get in touch with the attending officers and the supervisors and ask for a review of it. But ultimately, the 4 E's are still very much in play for the police. Will always attempt to utilise engagement and explaining the situation in the first place. And then some occasions, the minority of occasions, I would have to say there is just a bit of ignorance in terms of exactly what the rules are currently. But yes, we do expect executive action to be taken, and that, as I say, gets reviewed by myself daily.
I'm sorry to say, Neil, but I'm not aware of anybody who's raised a complaint with me with any of the actions being formally taken. Obviously, I'm only hearing for the complainant, not for the person that's been responded to, so that may not be the case, and I do understand that, but people aren't seeing other people being asked to leave the property, you know, and people are continuing to be there. But I don't want to take up more of the time. It's just say this is an ongoing issue. I'm happy to talk to you in a different setting to give some examples of that, if that helps you in any way.
Yeah, that would be ideal. Thanks.
I think the important thing, and you're perfectly aware of it, Heather, is that, and I get it on a regular basis as chair of the community council, and because I'm a Kent face in the town, people say, "Oh, you need to deal with that. That house up there has got, they're drinking in it, or they're doing this, or they're doing whatever, or there's bikes there." I'm not going to do anything about it at all. You need to phone the police and deal with it and give your name and address so that the police can then deal with it. We can't deal with it second hand. So it's just a reminder that that's what has to happen. Any more queries, questions for Neil? Nope. Right. Fire and rescue. I take it, Jim, you are with the Fire and Rescue.
Hi, Bill.
I'm watch manager that's currently on duty in the Cumbernauld station at the moment.
Right.
Hi, Bill. David Moore here. I've asked Jim to dial in because he may be deputising for me in some of these meetings. So it's to give him a flavour of what goes on and what to bring to the meeting. I've tried to share my screen there. Are you seeing the briefing report? Okay. So this is just an overview of the activity between the last meeting, the 30th of November and the 1st of March. And it's my intention to provide this overview at each of the community board meetings. I'd be very interested to hear if there's anything that you would like included that isn't included, or if there's anything in it that you don't think is particularly relevant. Again, please feed that back to me. So our training kind of topics for this month, to give you an idea, have been kind of knots and lines, rope work, hazmats and instant command. So that's the work that the crews have been doing on station over the last few months. Going on to incidents, there's been 29 operational incidents, and that's up until the period of the 21st of the 2nd. That's just because that's when I ran the report on the figures, the statistics. The next report will take the statistics from the 21st to the date of the next meeting, and that's how it will go on. So there's been 2 deliberate fires. Inspector MacLeod kind of alluded to those earlier, and we've been having some quite good partnership working with Police Scotland, carrying out initiatives in relation to crime and fire prevention in response to those. There's been 4 accidental fires which have been attributable to cooking. So that's people that have either been under the influence or distracted, and it kind of remains were highest cause of fires in the accidental dwelling fires in the home. As a result, in one of them, there's been 1 fire casualty, and I'm glad to say that the injuries weren't significant. 4 non-domestic fires, so these are in non-dwelling settings, and 7 special services, and it's an ongoing trend that 4 of these were to assist the ambulance service at medical incidents, either to gain entry or where we may have been the closest resource to initially give first aid until the arrival of Scottish Ambulance Service. No RTCs to report in that period, which is quite unusual, and there have been 14 false alarms. These are predominantly within business premises, and at each of those we have engaged with the property holder to look at how we can reduce these. Home fire safety visits, we've conducted 8 of these. We're still engaging over the phone, but in the highest risk categories, we're still making sure we go and engage with these people and make sure we're fitting smoke alarms where they're required. We've submitted AP1s to social work where that's been required, and we, like I say, through post-incident response, that's when we have a fire, we use that opportunity to engage with the local householders to ensure they're as safe as they can be. Our community action teams are engaging with the education establishments and schools, and this brings one to spring thematic action plan. So in the run up to Easter every year, we usually tend to have a spike in secondary fires, which are rubbish fires, grass fires and the like, and we're targeting our engagement with the schools in the run up to the Easter holidays, in the hope that will try and focus the mind out a wee bit and reduce those instances. The last slide there is just an overview of the statistics I've mentioned, and that's here for your reference. I've asked for the paper to be circulated, so I'm hoping that's been done. If not, I'll put my email in the chat bar, and if you require a copy of that, please feel free to email me. I've also got my email address at the bottom of the report, so if there's anything in the interim between now and the next board meeting, please don't wait until then. You can contact me anytime, and if there's anything you require more information on or anything specific you'd like to discuss, I'm free to do that also. That concludes my brief overview of the last couple of months, and I'm happy to take any questions on any of that.
Thank you, David. Anybody got any questions for David? Nope. Heather?
Chair, there's Councillor Brandon McVeigh's put a comment on.
Yeah, it got me, Christine, as you were saying that. Hello.
Hiya.
Can you go, Heather?
Hello, you there? Hi,
You
hi,
there?
David. I am here. I lost everybody as soon as I started talking there, and just for the record, I did say, "Oh shoot." I live in a household with under fives. I've lost my vocabulary in other ways. So, as I was saying, in the past, myself and the Fire and Rescue Service and others have had quite a dynamic debate regarding the facilities available to Kilsyth. I am delighted that we didn't get a rapid response unit, aka the Tonka truck, to Kilsyth. But I'm aware that the fire kit that is there is quite old now. I think it's about 11 years old, the full-size fire engine that we have in Kilsyth. Is there any possibility of getting a newer one? Because we know that a vehicle of that size is really needed for the 3-tier homes and flatted dwellings that we need in the area, and our ability to support the wider population of Fire and Rescue Service for the incidents it's received.
Yeah, so Heather, there's no plans for a new vehicle. There is an asset replacement programme, and it will come eventually, but there's no plans in the immediate 3 to 5 years that I'm aware of. There is no plans to reintroduce the suggestion of a rapid response unit. We're glad to know. So we will be retaining the full-size appliance, and we will be retaining the instant support unit, which provides support for other incidents. It provides stuff like extra lighting, BA cylinders and stuff like that. It is something we monitor. Watch Commander Davy Boyd, I'm sure you're familiar with Davy. He's in regular, probably daily contact with myself, and there was a vehicle before that one. We kept regular updates on, maintenance updates on it, and we used that to progress getting the current vehicle that we have just now. So if we start to encounter any issues with that, it will be taken forward to try and progress the need for a new vehicle, but it's not the highest priority for Kilsyth now. The vehicle they've got is adequate, it's well maintained, and it's got the most up-to-date equipment on it. I hope that answers your question, Councillor.
Thanks, David. It's just I'm just wondering, and we can talk about this separately, about what the lifespan of a unit is, because obviously we're a growing population with diverse households and community, and just to make sure that our local retained fire service that we all respect immensely, along with our full-time colleagues, that that they've got the best possible asset there at their disposal. So thanks, David.
No worries. If I can get any more specifics, I'll direct them to you.
Grand. Thank you very much. Any other questions to David? Right. Thank you. Just before we go off that, I would just want to record the community's thanks to the police and the fire and rescue for all that you do in the community. It's the police and the fire and rescue, particularly the police, are criticised on a regular basis. And until you can walk in their shoes or somebody else's shoes, then you shouldn't be in a position to criticise them because you don't know what the problems are. So I think we should just record our community thanks to the police and the fire and rescue, and David and Neil, pass that on to the staff. Thank you very much. Yes. Item 11, any other competent business? Grand? Right, well, if there's nothing else, the date and time of the next meeting is Monday the 7th of June at 6:30 to 8:30. And I'm sure in due course, Christine will issue the relevant connection. But thank you all for coming out, giving up your evening and attending the meeting. Okay, thank you very much indeed. Bye.
Thanks, Chair.
Bye.
Bye, thank you.
Bye.
Oh, thanks to you, Bill, the new chair.